All right, good afternoon. We are starting chapter 3, which is on socialization this week. And if you've looked at the schedule, you know that we have a discussion board. And for each of these discussion boards, I'm going to create a short video, right? I probably should have done this before, right? But I do like my students to kind of see what I look like and understand that there's a real person on the other side of the computer screen since this is an online class. Um, but we'll do this several more times this semester where I'll post a video, I'll ask a question, and then I'll have you respond in a discussion board, right? So, as I already said, this is chapter 3. It's about socialization. And this chapter, in a lot of ways, builds upon the previous chapter, which was on culture, because socialization is how we transmit culture from one generation to the next and from one individual to the next, right? And you'll learn in this chapter there's primary socialization, there's secondary socialization, right? Primary is what happens first, but it's also primary in the sense that it's the most important, right? And when we think about primary socialization, we're typically thinking about what parents, the first 5, 6, 7 years of a kid's life, what they teach their kids. It's not just parents, but daycare workers, grandparents, neighbors, and things like that, right? And this chapter on socialization starts by talking about feral children, right? Which are like wild children. And there's one particular case called Jeannie, a girl that was held in isolation for long periods of time, denied social interaction. So she was denied socialization early in her life. And so she was a person where culture was largely absent, right? And cases like that are often called forbidden experiments, right? This is a forbidden experiment. You couldn't do this to someone intentionally, but when it happens, we can learn a lot from it, right? And in the case of Jeannie, shows us that human beings without culture, without primary socialization, are often a creature that's in a lot of ways more like an animal than a human, right? So if they have not had social interaction, primary socialization is largely absent, they cannot speak or write or read, right? They have no symbolic language at all, right? They have no norms. They know none of the norms of society, none of the values, right? And these, we learned in chapter 2, are kind of the elements of culture, right? And if you, and there are videos of Jeannie like on YouTube and stuff, and maybe I'll provide a link to those. But if you watch those videos, you see a young girl that walks, her posture, she's makes noises, but they're not words; they're more like grunts, and she makes some progress, is able to learn some words, but never really masters human language, right? So she never fully recovers from that isolation during her childhood, right? And so one big part of being a human is and it's not just inherited, but it's things that happen to us that are taught through social interaction, where humans, or Homo sapiens, you might say, become human beings. And that's through socialization, right? You might have already picked up on that sociologists view human beings as inherently social, right? And we rarely exist and live our lives in isolation. And when we do, we suffer to a great extent. And Jeannie suffered throughout her life, right? Because she was isolated from other people. And so it's a fascinating case, Jeannie is. And there's been other cases similar throughout history, right? Of these children that were, I don't know, in Roman myths, like, what is it, Romulus and Remus, were raised by wolves or something like that. Or you can also think of the myth of Tarzan, right? He's, not raised by people, but raised by animals and stuff like that, right? So these, fictional stories, but there's also real life stories, and they've kind of always captivated our attention, right? So I want you to think about these things, and for our discussion board, it's like, what is socialization? What happens when socialization is absent, right? And through what is primary socialization, what is secondary socialization, and when things go wrong, what is absent in the individual, right? And the answer to that is mentioned in the previous chapter, those kind of elements of culture, right? So I want you to talk about those things, learn some lessons from cases like Jeannie. And I'll try to find a video, and I'll post a link as well as this video, right? You guys have a nice day. It's been nice talking to you. I look forward to your comments on the discussion board.